Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Roundup. Some companies have been very bad indeed, but are finally caving to the pressure, while others have been good. Bethesda, though, they have somehow managed to be incompetent. Not that I'm complaining too much, because they accidentally released the de novo workaround for their own game, so GG. Past that, we've got big launches, we've got the impact of the global situation, and a rather funny story that I think might actually have left us with a bunch of confused Twitter jocks. Before we start, though, if you want to be up to date with everything you need to know about the game industry, be sure to subscribe. If you want to help us out with Tube Daddy and the big algorithm, hit that like button, leave a comment, and if you want to see what our game studio is kicking up, then hit up the links below. And with that, let's get going. 43,000 concurrent players in Steam, but 300,000 viewers on Twitch. Those are Half-Life Alyx's stats, and they show exactly what you would expect. Extremely high concurrent players for a virtual reality game, but still clearly held back by the barrier to entry, which this time round wasn't just affordability, because the Valve Index had been sold out for months, though one has to wonder if, like production issues that have obviously happened in the world maybe held the sales potential of that hardware back. Anyway, it's clear that things have gone well. Now, Valve, of course, will have known that there is a barrier to entry for VR, and it actually could be that part of their Twitch success was helped by things like the spectator HUD and the spectator camera smoothing, both of which offer a vastly better viewer experience, which specifically is great for Twitch. I mean, seriously, if you watch just raw VR camera feed, it's a really jittery affair, and you can also set like which eye it uses as well. So overall, pretty cool. That means that more people will get to experience it, which is really good. Now, I think it's interesting. Valve I think know that VR is its own thing, right? I think they know that the VR people will want to hop on. I think they know that Alyx will be a real driver for VR, but that there still will be people who just quite frankly don't want to spend that amount of money. So it's nice that Valve actually went to the effort of, making the Half-Life Alyx experience actually available for those other people. I mean, seriously, if they didn't make that as good of a viewing experience, you could maybe make the argument that they wouldn't be wanting people to just watch a Let's Play. Now, that said as well, I think that the more exposure Alyx gets, the better it will be, especially for sales, because Alyx is a tremendously good game. It's not a VR tech thing. I've played it for 4 hours. It is incredible. It is basically one of, if not the best VR games ever made. It's certainly at least at what it's trying to do. So yeah, obviously the more people get their eyes on that, I think the more sales they will get and the more interest they will drum up. And certainly next time I think we see a major virtual reality sales event, yeah, this is going to be a massive force multiplier for that entire industry. Then there's one final thing. There is the money side of things, right? Because Valve are obviously going to have a lot of sales with this, but you've also got to remember that the index is bloody expensive. You're over $900 there if memory serves. So yeah, they're selling copies of Alyx, and yeah, it's not going to sell as much as even Half-Life Episode 2, Episode 3 would if it existed, but you have to remember that for a whole bunch of those Alyx sales, they're also selling a $900+ hardware setup. Now, what their margins are, what their R&D costs are, who the hell knows, but I think this is going to be a pretty good financial situation for Valve. That said, I mean, if you do get to skim the cream off the top of basically the PC gaming sector, it's probably not going to matter that much. Alright, next up, companies behaving badly. GameStop are not the only ones being irresponsible. According to a report from Rank and File Canada, the massive QA and localization firm Keyword Studios were also putting their employees at risk. Now, at the time of that report, employees were expected to come in or to face penalties, even if they had reason to believe that they had fallen ill. So that's pretty insane, isn't it? It's no surprise that the day after that report was published, Keyword suspended those penalties because it was a bloody bad look, and they sped up their distancing practices. And I think, look, this just goes to show the need to actually expose what companies are actually doing, the need to blow the whistle if there is a whistle to be blown. I mean, they weren't even properly doing sanitizing equipment for even things like virtual reality headsets, which is wild. And I think this also, to tie it back into the rest of the industry, this kind of ties into the topic of game delays. Localization and QA, they need to happen. If those things don't happen, expect delays at best. Or at worst, big companies, pushing out games without the, pushing out the games without the adequate testing. I mean, sure, a few shippable bugs is fine, but all too often games do come out half broken, and this certainly won't help that. Of course, though, they weren't the only companies being a pack of dicks. There's an update to Friday's story. GameStop have now closed stores, moving to a delivery-only service where possible. Now, this is, of course, after they did everything they could to not close. There is good news, though, as they're now offering 80 hours of paid time off, or 2 weeks of extra pay for the staff who are not eligible for the former. Now, that certainly is good, but I've got to be real with you here. This problem is going to last longer than 2 weeks. While something like, this situation with GameStop would be a bit more okay in, say, the United Kingdom, following our government's commitment to cover 80% of people's wages. I mean, who knows what that situation will be like in the US if there's lockdowns or things like that. So hard to say what's going on overall in the long term there. Now, the staff who feel uncomfortable working delivery-only stores, they've been told to tell their supervisors, and the CEO did say that their decisions wouldn't impact their employment, which is good. We just need to, see how much pressure is actually exerted on the staff there. Now, GameStop have struggled for years, and they have appeared reluctant to shut down in this situation, even when their employees' and customers' health was on the line. So what changed their mind? I mean, it's pretty obvious. Outside pressures, right? The massive PR hit that they received for that essential retail statement that they made, that will not have done them any favors, and a complete disdain for staff and shopper well-being alike. I mean, that's unlikely to help a struggling retailer actually come back and get goodwill. And that goodwill would be important with the new business model they've pivoted to, which is basically to be a sort of a weird town square where they want to have gaming stations and eSports stuff in their stores. Well, if people hate your guts, they're not going to want to hang out at your store. So, yeah, a little bit of a weird situation. I mean, certainly, I can't see GameStop going in a better direction. And if we're to hop things back into analysis mode for a second here, how are people buying games right now? Especially given that there are lockdowns in more and more places. They're buying them digitally. That is not good for GameStop. And I think that this situation, especially as, it lengthens and maybe any of the ripple effects in terms of people's behavior, that's going to solidify that shift to digital. It's going to accelerate it. And that's going to be extremely bad for GameStop's model. Next, though, it is worth covering a bit of the good. So other companies are being a bit more forthcoming and looking after their staff. Blizzard staff in California and Texas have been working from home for a good while now, and the company actually put together a drive-through, sort of care package dispensary for them in the parking lot, which is pretty good stuff. They've even been pretty good to their non-core staff, like the on-site vendors and contractors who are actually still getting paid. So that's real good. Then Paradox Interactive also sent care packages to staff, even including ergonomic chairs. That's really good and actually quite a lot of money. And quick tip for you, by the way, those gaming racer style chairs? They're really bad for your back. They might feel cozy, but they're bad for your back. So if you're going to be at home for ages, I would consider investing in a chair that is a bit more designed for the health of your back. But overall here, I think a win-win. It's good for the staff, it's good for PR. People are going to reward those companies for being good to their staff. So overall, I think the incentives are all aligned, and it does make good sense. Okay, let's move on. Bethesda. Doom Eternal is a bloody brilliant game, but it did release with Denuvo. And also without Denuvo, funny enough, because the Bethesda.net launch version just contained a DRM-free exe. You just needed to overwrite the Denuvo, regular one, and there you go. The most effortless crack pretty much ever. Bethesda have, of course, since updated their version, but the exe is already, of course, in circulation for the people who want it. This, it's not even the first time this has happened to that publisher. Rage 2 also launched with a DRM-free exe last year. What the hell's going on there? There's actually a rumor that this is some sort of internal anti-DRM sabotage protest from Bethesda staffers. That's completely unverifiable, of course, but it is, it's an interesting thing to think about now that it's happened twice in 12 months. Like, how did they let that happen? Now, despite all of this, of course, Doom Eternal is a great game. It's had a strong opening weekend. It hit 100k concurrence on Steam alone, and it peaked at 145k viewers on Twitch. So overall, good stuff there. And it's interesting in this case, Denuvo can hurt performance a lot right, in different games. It's sort of, the Denuvo implementation often varies a little bit from game to game, so the performance hit will vary. Like, I think it was DMC 5, well, Devil May Cry 5, that had issues with its Denuvo implementation. Now, in this case, I've been playing on the Steam version, so I'm just going to assume that I've been playing with Denuvo version, and it has ran tremendously. So, yeah, it might actually be a good implementation of Denuvo, but still, Denuvo is, you know, pretty bad stuff in most of when it's used. And then finally, I just want to work out, or I mean, it's impossible to work out, but just sort of posit, like, how did this happen? What is the internal process for actually verifying the files you're sending out to people? What's going on there? You know, if this is some sort of internal protest, where is that person in the chain? Because they must be really close to the end, somewhere where there's no checks and balances afterwards. It seems really weird that that's happened, and I mean, who knows? Because this is obviously a case where Bethesda's incompetence, for once, has actually been good for customers. Anyway, with that, let's move on. Okay, so you know, any time that esports would make it onto mainstream TV, and then you'd see the legions of people absolutely losing their minds over video games on the telly. Well, yeah, they're going to be eating some of their own words now. Live sports is, of course, not really a thing right now, so many sports have actually hopped over to their digital equivalents. And no, Federer and Nadal are not playing StarCraft, but we do have a Spanish football match being settled on FIFA. And that was to 60k viewers, and inspired by that success, the rest of the league actually just held their tournament over the weekend on Twitch, with Real Madrid coming out on top. All good fun, plus they raised 140,000 euros for research. It's not just them though. Formula 1 has also enjoyed some success in going digital, so a popular driver who's also a Twitch streamer called Lando Norris actually almost overtook the LCS's viewership when he was streaming an F1 2019 event with both real and esports drivers playing the game. And then also, to sort of pop it over to America for NASCAR, they've also made the switch with iRacing actually bringing in a bunch of new viewers because of the esports for, well, basically esport being broadcast on ESPN. So yeah, turns out the staging real-world events in esports with the best drivers and esports players is an acceptable enough substitute, at least for now. And just overall with this, I think this is another example of gaming just being a force for good, actually being really helpful and really vital in these times. Now, there was one dumb thing that I saw, I think it was on Twitter. There was a bunch of people basically screaming about how the gamers need to stop using the internet as much because the gamers are, you know, overloading the internet with all of their gamer bandwidth. Now, here's the rub. Gamer bandwidth is tiny. You are dealing with, like, you know, less than a tenth of Netflix. So much less. It's basically negligible gaming bandwidth usage. So yeah, if someone actually says that, just go get some numbers for, like, you know, how many, what's the downstream that World of Warcraft uses, and just throw that at them. It's tiny as compared to watching like a 720p video even. So yeah, there you go. That's something I just thought I should also slip in here. Anyway, that's it for the roundup. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like, sub, all that good stuff, and I guess, hey, stay tuned tomorrow. It's not like we've got anything better to do, is it? Cheers, I'll see you next time.